how to adjust it.
Councillor Soper, you're not an apology? No. No.
Sorry? She appears to be here.
Yeah. Okay. Right, welcome everyone to the December 5 Infrastructure Services meeting. Apologies, we just need to correct. I've got Councillor Boyle, but Leslie and Councillor Crackett. Okay, sorry, Councillor Soper's down. Apologies for that. Apology for the apology.
The apology's not till tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. Sorry, it's ended up on here. Okay, can I have someone move that we accept those apologies? Moved Grant, seconded Ria. Put that, all those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, that now moves on to, we have no Zoom attendees, there's no public forum. We have a major late item, which is a verbal update on recycling future. I'll move that. Can I have someone second that, please? Second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. We also have a minor late item regarding recycling, but was presented to me late, and I'm not allowing that to go ahead today. It's going to come back at another infrastructure meeting. So now we move on to the minutes of the Waste Advisory Group that were on the 16th of October. Barry, you were there? You like to move those true and correct? Yeah. Thank you. Second, Peter, you were there? Okay. Put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. That takes us to the minutes of the Infrastructure Committee meeting 7th of November. Have someone move? Thank you, Pania. Seconded Barry. Put those true and correct. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Takes us now to the CCTV policy deliberations. Now, who would, Rhiannon, do you want to, no?
I'm afraid Rhiannon is unwell, so you've got me.
Thanks.
But I promise I know at least something about what I'm talking about, so. Tēnā koutou, good afternoon, councillors. Hopefully this will be quite brief. So CCTV draft policy, as you know, was consulted on alongside the City Block hearings. As the report details, there weren't a lot of submissions directly on CCTV, so we haven't made too many changes. The submissions that we did receive we thought were really helpful, so we went ahead and incorporated them, but they are pretty minor. So to go over those, we've put a long stop date of 90 days for storage of footage, unless otherwise specified. But the intention is that each camera's specific storage period will have to be specified, but that's only going to be known as the rollout happens. But this long stop is sort of a catch-all date, so no footage is going to be accidentally kept longer than needed. The exception to that, of course, is if it's identified as needed for criminal proceedings, in which case an exception can be made. And again, these amendments arose from the submissions, but also they're in line with the guidelines from the Privacy Commissioner. We've also added in a few extra words just to strengthen the requirements around, for example, the use of footage, access to recorded footage. So again, some more details there about the types of preventative measures we might take to make sure that it's kept secure. And then a few more details on how people can make complaints should the need arise. Otherwise, there's very little. So the policy has been laid out in a new format, which is the version that you'll have been given with the yellow highlights. And I'd like to say a special thank you to our comms team who've done a beautiful job of creating this template for us, which we're hoping to use going forwards, make it look a bit more shiny and hopefully people will read it. But otherwise, that's about it. Unless anyone has any questions, I'd be very happy to help.
Right, questions. Tom.
I very much support the 90-day long stop date. Can I just ask whether that requires some human intervention after 90 days, or is there an automatic deletion?
I don't know that at this point, and I'm sure that will become known as the details of the new system put into place. So this policy has been circulated around at least some of the project team, so they're going to be aware of that. And that, as I said, much of this is going to be known as those details as we get to that point in the project.
I mean, I asked that question because I understand, you're not in a position to answer it, but I think for those who are going to be involved, I would very much support it being automatic, because if it requires human intervention, it will not necessarily happen.
Trudy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, currently it's automatic. And so what we do is we tag data if we need to retain it for longer than 90 days. So, or 30 days. So it's quite common in most systems, but we hear that and we can take that on board operationally.
Okay, good, Tom. Nobby.
Just a
Sorry,
couple
Mia.
clarifications. One is that it states never to use the footage except for the intended purpose. That's a very general statement. Very general statement. So where's the intended purpose? I mean, is it just something broad like community safety? And and what Pandora's box does that open up when you start having a very...
Yeah. So what the Mayor's raised is an interesting question, like the use, and I know one city in New Zealand that uses it to monitor the bus lane that you're not supposed to go in and then send out infringement notices. Now, I don't think we intend to use it for traffic offences. I don't think that's the thing, but I think that's what the Mayor's asking about its actual use.
Yep, so through you again, the purpose for each camera is to be identified with that camera as it's installed. When we drafted the policy, we added in a list of sort of general purposes that are allowed, that we are allowing the CCTV to be put in place for. And yes, again, I acknowledge that it is quite broad, but that's sort of necessary at a policy level because the specific purposes will be known as those cameras are installed. So that detail will be added, and that's again why we've put in the need for various procedures and documentation that will be developed.
Yeah, just some supplementary questions to that. So just to use an example, if we're not going to have a generic statement like for community safety, and we're going to do what the policy suggests, which is each camera we install will have its own criteria, that's an absolute minefield. So I just want to signal that. And the other issue is what happens, like we manage the liquor licensing laws. So what happens if I'm a policeman looking at an assault going on down in D3 and I see somebody stagger out of one of the local licensing areas, absolutely drunk beyond belief. Would I know Darren's going to put his hand up, but is that a legal use of a camera to say, hey, to ask the question of the licensee, hey, was he being served on your premises?
So I can answer that. No, they can't, because you would need to prove, which you couldn't, that they were intoxicated.
Yeah.
There was a case previously where we tried to ping a local business for serving someone who was intoxicated based on the method of walking, where in fact that person had a disability.
Yeah, they were drunk.
They were.
And just a final question, Chair, is around the 90-day provision. So I just want to be clear that we will hold it for 90 days unless the police come back and ask otherwise. And given the statutory limit for murder is open-ended, it could be 20, 30, 40, 50 years. If they ask, then we hold it until they say they don't need it any longer. Is that the idea?
I'm not sure. You have to ask. Tree?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it really depends on the circumstances. If we've received a warrant for data, for example, and that warrant stipulates that we're going to hand over that evidence as we're required to by law, we will hold an incident until it has been through the courts if it relates to our body cam, for example, with staff at the moment. But every circumstance is different, but usually for something like that, for a murder, you're going to need a warrant, and there could be footage that we may not have, or that a cold case from 20, that happens today that they're investigating in 20 years, we wouldn't have the data for. That is just the nature of the beast. I don't know if that answered the question, sir.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. Because, if we've got serious crimes that have an unlimited data being dealt with by the police, are they going to be in here all the time sort of saying, yep, look, we've had an assault in there, we're not sure who the person is, we want you to keep all your cameras. And it won't just be the one camera that's focused at the area, because they'll have a right to ask for other adjoining cameras, and this is the coming back to the camera by camera stuff again, is that you can't just say, well, look, I'm sorry, the guy was seen running down the road, and as he gets around the corner, he comes onto another camera. We can't give you that because that's not what the camera's set up for. So I just want us to be quite clear about what we're managing going forward. But never mind.
Rudy, you look like you've moved into the hot seat.
I didn't like talking to the pillar.
Yeah, hey, I've been called many things.
I believe that the policy gives us the ability to record data for what its intended purpose is for. For cameras that have been aligned to being for security and safety of city streets, that data will be recorded on a camera that allows that. It'll be recorded and stored for up to 90 days unless we have a warrant or there's an incident where we know that we have to tag that data and keep it aside. That's my understanding. Does that help?
Yep, and so just to help me understand the original issue, which is the camera by camera designation. Like, you know, if we're putting, I don't know what we're putting, 50 or 60 cameras in the CBD, in what circumstances would those cameras have different criteria on them?
Only if that was something to do with the CCTV project as a whole, if it had outlined that there were a series of cameras, for example, that were only to monitor vehicle traffic numbers on a street. And I've made that up, that's not what Erin's doing. But if there was something specific like that, that camera can only collect that data for that.
Yeah, just bear with me as I tease it
Yep.
out one more step. So if we have some of it that's not general security of the community, and other areas that we have just traffic management, then when somebody's run over by a car in the traffic management area, the police can't use it.
Potentially, that's correct, but I'm not aware that we have that at the moment. So we have a gap of no camera whatsoever, so there is no data. But the camera so that I understand what we're putting in for are for security for the community and safety for the community, and so those cameras are the top that what you'll be tracking the data on. Some cameras, if they are a specific type of camera, such as tracking traffic numbers, they're set up so they don't record specific vehicles or people. They only tag a number, so they're no good to someone to look at as such. They're just recording data in a space.
If I could just add to that as well, specifically for the police, the policy envisages that police will be asked to fill out a request form for footage for a specific incident. They would have to specify exactly what they're looking for, which cameras they wanted to look at, and then we can respond to that. And that's something similar to what we do at the moment, but we're planning to have more robust documentation around it. So the police can say, we believe that an incident happened in this location, do you have any camera footage? And they can ask for that. If we don't have it, for whatever reason, we don't have it. If we do have it and they have grounds to request it, and again, as Trudy has indicated, if they had a warrant or something like that, then we could hand it over. But again, they'll have to fill out a form, they go through a process, and it's planned that we enter into some kind of memorandum of understanding with the police or similar, which sets out the rules which would govern that.
Just to interrupt there, sorry. You've touched on an issue that the police have to apply. 1 o'clock in the morning in the control room, something's happening. They need to rewind, go back, access some stuff. How do they do that?
So again, that's what the aim of a memorandum of understanding with the police would be, and again, that's going to be something that we'll have to work out, depending on the technology and depending on the type of access that police have. But from doing research around New Zealand, some councils do have an ability for police to just show up and access footage at any time. Some of them require a longer process. So that will depend on the types of cameras that we have and how they're used and what agreement we enter into with police.
So just to follow on that, because I'm still not clear. Maybe I'm just having a bad day. If we're going to do camera by camera by camera, identification of what the purpose of the camera is, and if it's not for community safety, then why the hell are we putting it in the first place? Our job is not to do traffic management. But given that that's an example of how it might go away from general safety, I'm not sure how the police would get to it if, for argument's sake, we had some hoon driving through the areas where the cameras are looking at the looking at the traffic management and they see somebody run over or a car smash into another car, whatever, because this says under no circumstances will council authorise the use of the footage outside its designation.
But at that point, aren't they committing a crime?
Who?
Those people.
Well,
Anyone who's captured on
it may not be. I mean, I used it as a bad example, but you know, if people are hooning around or whatever, you know, the police might want to get on top of that before they end up with a crime. I mean, I
Sustained
don't
loss
know.
of traction is a crime.
I think this, just want to say that this is the draft policy, and this will move on the 19th to council, won't it? This to be adopted formally?
The policy was to be adopted by this committee unless, no, in that case I'm completely wrong. It's to be recommended to council for
Correct.
adoption.
Okay, so we've got 2 weeks to do some fine tuning, and I think those questions, if they are things like that, in detail like the Mayor's raising, we've got that time, I think, in the middle too. Yep.
I think what I'd encourage us is to remember that the CCTV policy isn't specific to the CCTV project that we currently have underway. That CCTV project, we need to make sure that we absolutely get the scoping right around that, and that we're very clear on what we want those cameras to provide in terms of a balance between community need and cost. Obviously, it might be nice for cameras to do everything, but we want to be very practical around what that need is and keep the scope limited to something that is affordable to the community. But to the point that was made around, we already have CCTV that is in place at the moment outside of that project, and this policy also relates to that existing CCTV. But absolutely, we'll take on board that feedback as it relates to the project.
And if I could add a final point, it was sort of envisaged in the report that we anticipate that issues may arise as part of the implementation, as part of the rollout, and if anything arises, we will bring it back to council for consideration if any changes needed to be made. At this point, we are trying to put something in place that's comprehensive, that gets us a starting point so that we can get the project that next step along.
Okay, move on to Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So this isn't the first CCTV project in a city. What other policies have we reviewed from other towns or cities?
I don't have a full list off the top of my head, but it was a lot. I did a pretty comprehensive review of as many published CCTV policies as I could find. Some councils just incorporate it as part of their privacy policy. Some councils have a standalone CCTV policy. Obviously, we've decided now to break the CCTV section out of the privacy policy, which is where it used to be contained. But yes, I reviewed it against as many as I could find, and found the sort of most consistent approaches, and then what would work for this council specifically.
Yeah, right, okay. And then probably a little bit to the question, I note in the policy you've got review 2029. Maybe that should be a little bit shorter, given it's a new policy, should be a review in the first year.
Yep.
And then can roll out to perhaps a longer sequence post that would be just a thought, you know, because it is a new policy. And I think Erin's point is also a good point, where we've got existing cameras, but equally we've got some new cameras coming in, and they may be different, so there might be a subset to it. So that'll reflect through on the policy that gets received in a couple of weeks. Yeah, no, and thank you. It's a good point. 6 years is just our standard review period, so absolutely, there's a good reason to bring that forward. Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Right, takes us on. Darren, you still want to go?
No.
You're on. Okay, Evelyn.
Kia ora. So my question's sort of been answered in part, but given that one of the conversations, the biggest part has been about community safety and improving how people feel in terms of safety within their community, including protection of assets and all those sorts of things. I would like to know, for my clarification, are we able to be proactive about keeping or tagging information to be kept, even though within the 90 days there hasn't been an official request from police for a crime? Because for the very reasons that have been said, sometimes there's a gap between an event and the police becoming looking at further proceedings. So one, do council staff have the right to see that an event has taken place and tag it for longer duration than 90 days, or does it always have to be police that initiate the 90 days? So in other words, can we, on behalf of the citizens, make a proactive decision to say this may be needed for a prosecution further down the road, including council prosecuting somebody if it's an offence against council property, for example?
True.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to keep us back. We're doing the policy today. In terms of the operations of CCTV cameras, we have operational guidelines that occur today within council, and we tag footage where we have meet some prerequisites for staff, but I won't go into that in detail.
No.
So longer term, we can always review those operational policies and balance out. We can't keep it all for 90 years, but it's usually pretty obvious what we need to keep, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, no, so I recognise the operational sensitivities. Yep. What I was really concerned about is that we might preclude ourselves from doing that if the wording of this is not permitting of it.
Given that the extent that Hannah has gone to looking at different CCTV policies, there was nothing in there when I saw it that made me think of that. It looked very similar to most council type or other organisations' CCTV policies. But it's about the operation and training and procedures we put in place following the policy that create the benefit.
Thank you.
I think the other piece is because that next project is such a large change, we'll come back and review the policy as we roll out that project to make sure that everything aligns and if there are any updates that are required.
No, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Erin's partly said what I was going to say, but not entirely. I just thought the purpose issue was getting into a bit of a circular discussion because page 21 has got the cameras multiple, as in cameras plural, with 7 bullet points for purposes. And that covers everything from the enhancing public safety through to assisting other agencies, improving staff security, etc., etc. There's 7 bullet points there and it's cameras plural. So at the moment, the policy is providing for all cameras, not just the one project, and for a series of 7 very clear purposes. To me, that's what the policy needs to do at this point. The refinements will come later. And on page 24, where you've then got the storage issue, it says, and will in all cases be deleted within 90 days unless retained for a specific purpose. It actually leaves open who might define that specific purpose. It has an example of possible criminal proceedings, but that's only an example. The specific purposes will also be operationally further defined, and to me that's what a policy should be saying at the moment. So rather than get any further into what might be refined further in operational policies, operational procedures, I think what we've got is a good comprehensive policy that allows the further refinement. And congratulations, because I can imagine it took quite some putting together to get to this point.
Yes, it was.
Alan.
Yeah, I was just, also on page 21 as well, actually, I was just sort of thinking that when we first started talking about cameras, it was all about public safety, and it seems to have now gone from public safety, it's still included in there, of course, but it's gone from public safety to actual policing. And of course, if you start using those cameras for, let's say, a traffic violation, if that's what they're being used for, do you not think people may look on them as not being a positive thing, possibly a negative thing? And of course, if anybody pleads not guilty to anything, then you're going to have to keep the footage for that, possibly 90 days too, before they get a court date. Anybody, so do you not think you're making a rod for our own backs?
So as I understand it, Councillor, we can't do that legally at the moment anyway. It's not set up. You can't. as I understand it, Michael, Mr. Morris will know, but I didn't think we could do that anyway. That's right. So we haven't specifically. Do you mean the bottom dot point on page?
Managing traffic and monitoring traffic movements.
Yeah, that doesn't say policing. It's just
Facility
talking.
council with regulatory functions. And for business improvement, I mean, I thought that was an unusual one.
At the moment, by law we can't do that. That was floated as a change by central government at one point.
Like, I mean, I can see a use of it in traffic management. You look with the new street layouts we've got, Don and Esk, and you get a queue of cars waiting at the lights. And, you know, staff can't be there looking at it all the time. And of course, it only lets 2 cars through. That's not good enough. So we need traffic management, things like that are totally acceptable. And, you know, being aware of that, it is completely different to policing. And I'm quite happy with the wording of that last bullet point. Yeah. So Tom, next.
Thanks for giving me a second go, Chair. Notwithstanding what Leslie said, which I agree with about, you know, this matters to be settled later, but I think one of the fundamental things that the public have got a right to expect councillors to be able to articulate is in what circumstances will CCTV footage be released to, particularly the police. I think we ought to be able to articulate that. Now, at the moment in page 25, it might be expressed differently elsewhere, but what it says in page 25 is that if police or other agencies wish to access recorded CCTV footage, they're required to complete the CCTV footage request form, which sounds like a pretty low bar. You know, you just got to complete a form. And I mean, I think we did okay. I know there will be all sorts of things will develop from this in terms of operating standards, but you know, a question I would expect to get is in what circumstances can you release that video? And it would be, I think, a poor response if I was to give the response. Well, the police have to fill in a form. That's, you know, there's got to be criteria that are clearer than that, I think, and even at an early stage.
Through Mr. Chair, quite, and I agree. That form is yet to be drafted, but absolutely I take your point that it's not as simple as filling out a form and automatic rights. There will be criteria to meet, certainly. But in the next few weeks, if council wishes, we can definitely add in some of that detail or take that away on advisement. But I perfectly take your point, but not envisage that it would be as low a bar as fill out a form and automatic rights.
Okay. Darren, I'm going to let you go since you missed
Since
the chance.
I stood down earlier, thanks. The last lot actually were monitored from the watch house at the police station. And I haven't heard that wouldn't be the case this time, and I think councillors also need to remember that when the police came and asked for it, that they wanted licence plate recognition in there as well, which allows things like stolen vehicles or vehicles of interest, I don't know, that's their definition, not ours, to be tracked as they move about the city. So I have no problem with somebody accessing the information if it's to assist with the investigation of a crime or to keep people safe. For anything else, you know, if let's say there's some philandering husband or something, that's not a crime. It's just something that's stupid. And even for monitoring traffic movements, that can help, but also it can draw attention to areas where there are traffic snarl-ups that are going on. So when you take into account the amount of time that you are surveilled elsewhere, and for those of you who've been in London or China, it's pretty much all the time, unless you've got something to hide. I'm not sure what the problem is.
The Mayor will make yours the last one.
Seeing that Tom had 2 bites of the cherry, I guess there's 2 issues. One is that we talk about having access to stored footage, but the police will have live active access all the time, aren't they? So I mean, so really all we're dealing with in that scenario is what we subsequently store, where they can come back to it as opposed to having it live. The other issue is that in this debate there are 2 very big polarised groups from what I see. those that want to be safe as they're out and about, and those who do not want Big Brother looking over their shoulder all the time. And so, for me, it's important that we get this right, because while we say we can amend it as we go along, we will get legal challenges the moment we step outside our own rules for one of those two groups. Either way. And just, oh, never mind, as you say.
But with satellite surveillance these days, Big Brother is literally
Yes, I know.
above us.
Every time you carry a cell phone. Yeah.
So with that access, I think this policy could potentially shape our tendering process, because in the world of supplying the correct software to use, not all software allows a permanent log if you go in and access. So that could become one of the requirements, that you can't, you can't get in there without you being labelled, and it's permanent. So as well as the request forms and stuff, I think that extra level of security could come through the tender process maybe. So we've got 5 recommendations here. Can I have someone move those? Thanks, Darren. Second, Leslie. You're going to put those recommendations. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, the next item, I've been informed, we're going to have to keep that on the table, or
Yes, this item has got a significant amount of history to it, and I would recommend that council will want to hear from the staff who have that information. Unfortunately, both Caroline Rain and Russell Pearson are unwell and are not in the office today, so I would recommend we defer that one until the next Infrastructure Committee meeting.
okay. Do we need to vote on that?
So staff have withdrawn that paper, essentially.
Oh, right.
Carry on to this one.
Yep, it's been withdrawn. Right, takes us to the road stopping at Green Hills. Now, do we need Russell for this? Heather.
No, Heather will be speaking.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this road stopping application was brought before council to approve the process of the initial consultation process. Through the consultation process, we received an objection from one of the occupiers nearby, and council decision is to either uphold the opposition to the road stopping process, and therefore stop the road stopping process at this point, or to take the matter through to the Environment Court for a hearing through the Environment Court if they decide that the opposition is not significantly justifiable.
Right. I'm a bit bewildered by this. Noe. Oh, actually, Darren. I'm going to go straight to Darren.
So, as a matter of process, I have no problem with moving the recommendations. There is the right of the objector to lodge an objection. If their objection went through a process, I'm sure that there would be a method of mitigating any concerns. So it's been before us. I don't see that removing the road classification would prevent subdivision for the objector.
In that case, you wouldn't be moving the current recommendation.
Correct.
Because the second recommendation would say that.
Sorry, uphold.
Opposite of what you
Yeah,
just said.
well, sorry, you're quite right. I misread. Time for a new prescription already. I don't see that if the objector wanted to lodge an application for subdivision, that something couldn't be facilitated from within whatever lots it had that they wanted to subdivide.
This does provide the objector with legal access to his property. So keeping the road as it is and finding an alternative way of providing the current occupier, so to speak, who's a farmer, by an occupation agreement until such time as the road is formed, is a satisfactory way of retaining that unformed legal road.
So we uphold 2.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Leslie, then Pania.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was going to say I would be prepared to move both the recommendations as they stand. At this time, I would not think it was to council's benefit to end up in an expensive environment court process, potentially, by taking the opposite decision for no particular discernible benefit I can see to council at the moment.
There is no cost to council by retaining the road as it is.
That's what I'm meaning.
Correct.
Yes, but there would be a cost if we took the opposite
Significant
decision and ended in the environment court, and therefore I can't see why we would potentially put ourselves in the environment court when the other position, as demonstrated by the recommendations as they stand, would give us a reasonable way of continuing.
Right. Thank you, Leslie. Pania.
Leslie sort of touched on my first one, was around, is there a cost for us to maintain that? But my other one is there any intention to actually put a road there in the future?
That is an answer I do not have at this point. It would also depend on whether there is any subdivision process or whether there is access required from that legal unformed road.
Okay.
Sorry, Mrs. Coop, can I just clarify, were you asking about, was there any intention from council to put a road there?
No.
To which Heather's liaised with the infrastructure managers around any use for that land, to which they've said no.
No, sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
I just want to clarify, this is just basically a paper road, isn't it? Currently used by the farmer, so that doesn't incur any cost for anybody, but it leaves the door open for subdivision in the future.
That is correct.
Well, I'd support we retain that position, which is our recommendation 2.
Right. So Leslie has moved recommendations 1 and 2. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yep.
Tom, I'm going to put those 2 recommendations. All those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Against? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Takes us to temporary road closure of S Street for Waitangi Esk Fest. G'day.
Sure, Mr. Chair, thank you. This application is for the temporary road closure of Esk Street for the Waitangi Days Festival. It's they'll be putting on music and cultural events and food. In terms of impact on the network, it will be very minor given what that section of Esk Street now looks like. It's not a through route, so we don't have any objection to it, subject to an event management plan being submitted.
Right, I think this is what we intended East Street to be used for, so I'll open up for questions. Any questions? Yes, Alan.
Just a comment, I'm just pleased to see them using East Street instead of Don Street for a change.
Yeah. Okay, any
Can we
questions?
please note my abstention?
Okay.
And you're welcome.
Right, so no further questions. So we have 1, 2, 3 recommendations. Moved Barry, seconded Peter. I'm going to put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
That is carried. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Chair.
Right, we've got an intersection safety report for the corner of Yarrow Street and Lindisfarne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm joined by my colleague Grant Fisher. This report is an information report for the committee regarding the intersection of Yarrow and Lindisfarne. Basically, what's triggered this is a crash history of the last 5 years. There's been 18 crashes, all of a similar kind. Currently, it's priority control, as opposed to any firmer controls on that. So what we're recommending at this stage is a traffic signal layout. There are some loss of parking in some areas, some of the legs, but the consistent behavioural we're seeing and the crash records we're seeing is that traffic from Lindisfarne are failing to see, failing to give way, and hitting, being struck by cars on Yarrow Street. Now, because it's a low-speed environment, essentially a 50k environment, we are fortunate that the crashes are not more serious. So of the 18 crashes, there's been 4 minor crashes and 1 serious one. But there's also been a lot of property damage as well, with people flying through fences more than once. When we went to the consultation out on the street, as one of the occupants told us, they've rebuilt their fence and wall a couple of times. So we think this is a really good approach, and we're certainly open for comment and questions.
Right, I see the recommendation is only to receive the report, so questions. Tom?
It's a busy intersection, which I use regularly. Traffic lights hold up traffic more than a roundabout does. Is there no room for a roundabout?
Essentially, no. Physically, to reduce the crash type, we would have to have a larger diameter to do that, which would mean property purchase and essentially into some buildings as well. So we'd have to take buildings too.
Okay, thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, just wondering, we've got a wee bit of a retail area on the corner there on the north-west corner. Are they all quite happy with that?
We, both Grant and myself, went out and did a site visit and knocked on the doors. The response was overwhelmingly positive. However, the kebab shop on the corner, the manager was not there, and I know that he relies on that traffic. So we're open to amending where the parking is without affecting the design. So we are open to that, and we've made that offer as well. So we are talking to them at the moment. We've done a letter drop as well to any other affected residents, but there was a sense of relief from a lot of people when we went out there.
Grant?
Yeah, just cost and time frame.
I'll pass you to Grant here.
So costs will be delivered within existing budgets. So it's co-funded through Waka Kotahi. Time frame, we're looking at delivery by end of financial year next year, so mid 2024. Yep.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. And is the Waka Kotahi funding already funding we've received, or is it part of the new bid?
No, already funding we've received. Yep.
Okay.
And the design essentially delivers on a safe system solutions, safe system solution, which is a requirement of their funding as well.
Yeah. And that's under the 50-50 partnership with Waka Kotahi?
I believe so. I'm not. Yeah, the funding is 50-50. That's correct.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sure.
Peter.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question, the cost, you said it's within budget, but could you give us a figure? How much it will cost council to?
I would need to come back to the council. Sorry, on the exact figure.
Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As a frequent user of the Lindisfarne Yarrow area, I can understand the sighs of relief that might have been had at the approach. I certainly agree it would be good to consult on this and bring it to a fruitful conclusion. That's been a problem corner for a long time, and it's well known if you live in the area that it has been a problem. So it's good to see the movement getting to the next stage. And I'm happy to move it if no one else has got other comments.
Moved Leslie, seconded Darren. Pania, sorry. You want to speak?
Oh, no.
No? Right. Okay, so we have mover and seconder. I'm going to put the recommendation that we receive the report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried. Thank you, guys.
Sure. Thank you.
Moves us to item 11, the primary infrastructure consenting program. Alistair.
Tall for me this chair. Hi, I'm Alistair Snow. Just working with Erin and delivering the 3 consenting projects. The purpose of the report is just to give you an update on where it's at and for you to receive it.
Make sure you keep the mic close.
Oh, is that not close enough? So the three projects involved in this program are the Bluff wastewater consent, the Awarua alternative water supply, and the Clifton wastewater consent project. We've commenced work on two of them, which is the Bluff wastewater treatment plant and the alternative water supply, and Clifton is scheduled to commence next year. Clifton's consent expires in 29, so we've got sort of 4.5, 5 years to complete that work. Bluff, the end of 2025, and Awarua is obviously a new consent, so that'll go through its own separate process. Awarua's at the moment, work's progressing on proving the Chatton aquifer, and work is commencing this month, which is based around developing a numerical model around what the aquifer can deliver, retesting the existing boreholes, and then looking at putting in some new boreholes to test where we think a bore field may be required. So all that work will continue over the next 4 to 6 months. Hopefully July next year we'll have some results to confirm the capability of the aquifer at the current location.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. You still carry on.
Okay. For Bluff, work's also well on the way there. That we've got a project team together. They are working away. There's three key streams of work. The first is around the BPO process, which is a best practical option process, which we'll need to run through to be able to demonstrate for the consent. And we're just entering the first stage of the optioneering for that, which is called the fatal flaws stage. So that's commencing actually tomorrow, and that'll get us through the optioneering process to our preferred option, which is scheduled for, we should know by July next year. The other one is a business case. So we've kicked off the business case so we can actually make sure that we understand what are the problems that we are trying to solve for that project, and also making sure we're making the best decisions for council and the community. And we understand what the options actually mean for the community. So that process is also happening. And also the third stream is around consultation. So we're working with Tammy and the other key stakeholders to make sure we get the consultation going early. Yeah, that's it. There's probably the only other item is that for Bluff, I've identified in the report some key gateways, which are suggesting we bring information up to the infrastructure group, so you understand where we are and we're making what decisions are being made during the process. So they're identified in the report. So there's sort of 6 gateways I've identified there.
Right, thank you for that. I'm going to open up for questions. Grant?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just with your gateways, just wonder if you could add to that the engagement plan around stakeholders, specifically relating to the Bluff community with their wastewater.
Yes.
You know, it's really important. Sit on the community board down there, and you know, it's important we keep them informed and engaged in the process. So it'd be good to see that stakeholder engagement plan as part of those gateways.
Yeah, well, the first draft's actually been completed, so I can submit that. So that covers all the consultation, all the stakeholders.
Yeah,
and there is Bluff.
Yeah, but what I'm meaning
the
is
dedicated
what's
one.
the ongoing commitment to engagement, and probably the best example is what the aluminium smelter do. They have regular meetings which are accessible by the community. They have one in Bluff, they have one in town, and they always get good turnouts, particularly down in Bluff, and there's some good engagement with the Bluff community between the two entities, and so there's a good model there you can.
So I'm happy to speak to that one. At this stage, we are engaging through the Bluff Community Board rather than directly with the community. It's not the sort of project where we would take out, I guess, direct community engagement normally around a consent. So I think I'd be interested in if council think we need to engage other than through the community board, those, you know, key stakeholders, obviously Te Ao Marama, the local Runanga, etc.
Yeah, no, so what I was meaning was it'd be great to be able to show the Bluff Community Board when you're going to come to them and engage. So what's the program of engagement with them specifically?
We've actually invited the Bluff Community Board onto the governance group. However, at this stage, they haven't been able to provide a resource to attend that, and have just asked us to keep them informed through the community board meetings.
yeah, it'd be good to see a structured approach to that. So if it's quarterly or it's 6 monthly,
Yep.
and then yeah, I'm not aware, but it may have happened that if there's anyone else that they think should be engaged.
Yeah.
in it.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to clarify that we weren't planning to do like a
No, no,
consultation
no,
like we would
no,
do in the
no,
mall
it's
or
just
something
a-
like that
how
with
we're
the
gonna keep
community.
them informed
Yeah,
in the structure of it.
that's no worries.
Tom.
So this is really just for my clarification. I'm not challenging the use of the word or anything, but I was intrigued by, on the Bluff wastewater consent, the relationship with Tuamarama Tami is described as a partnership, the partnership with Tuamarama. What do you mean by that?
Partnerships discussed in the Charter of Agreement between council, and so we're just trying to keep that relationship going. We're also trying to approach it on as any partnership is, so it's a two-way arrangement. So we're keeping them abreast of what's happening during the project as we progress through, and giving them the opportunity to give us feedback regularly through that. So they are now joining the governance group as well, and they've also made a recommendation that the two key Runaka also join the governance group, which we've agreed to as well.
So what will the makeup of the governance group be then?
Key ELT members, operational managers, and Tammy and the iwi now, sorry, and the Runaka now, and we've also asked the community board to join, but as Aaron said earlier, they've declined.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Probably most of these questions are for Aaron. So on the first page of the report, it talks about capital placement. So when you look at Clifton, for argument's sake, 89 million, is a majority of that not upgrading the plant, but actually the water to land discharge that runs from the plant?
There's a placeholder in there around, we don't know what the solution will be at this stage until we work through that. So based on, I guess, a range of different solutions that we've seen around the country, there's essentially a middle ground number in there depending on where we get to.
So
it could be more, it could be less.
So if through the current coalition government we get some relief from this, and we could follow other councils in water to water discharge, so we continue what we're doing at the moment, is it fair to say that most of the Bluff and Clifton costs that you got there would disappear?
I don't believe so.
You do or don't believe?
Sorry, what was that?
You do or don't?
I don't believe they would.
Yep.
And that's because we're already under significant pressure from Environment Southland as the wastewater regulator, as well as from a number of community groups around the discharges, both from our landfill and our wastewater treatment plant into the estuary.
Yep.
We do believe that we will most likely have to do something different there in the future, and that's the provision that we've made.
Okay. I mean, I've had feedback from government, and you can see it in the document here, that we don't know what's replacing Three Waters, and we don't know what's replacing the repealed RMA, which came as a bit of a surprise to many in local government that they're going to repeal that, and haven't in either case declared what's going to replace it in the short term. What the government or some of the government ministers have told me is that they will have a mechanism for dealing with two things. One is renewable energy, and the other is the wastewater discharge. So I think we'll get some changing landscape as we go forward past the initial 100 days. And I wonder why, given that that's an unlevel playing field at the moment, why we are starting to do a consent process for Clifton 5 years ahead of time. Seems an awfully long lead-in time.
What we wanted to do was essentially engage a planning team in particular, because we didn't want to start the process 3 years out and be told you've started too late. I was particularly aware when I was at one of the conferences this year around a council that's at the 10-year point and they still haven't gotten their consent approved 10 years after starting the process. It is a complicated space. I absolutely agree. It's changing and we don't know what that landscape's going to be in the future. We sort of have to play the ball that we have in front of us at the moment. What I can say is the planning team that we have assembled have advised us to expect this one to be complicated for Clifton. They are not as concerned around the bluff consent, but they have warned us to expect Clifton to be complicated.
And so just wanted to throw a bit of a challenge back to you, I guess, without being rude. You've said to us at a previous meeting that if we go beyond 2029, it's not the end of the world. So if we did take 10 years, if we started in 2027 and went 5 years past the decline, given that Dunedin's 20 years past, so long as we were heading in the right direction and trying to resolve the issues, we're not going to get held up by any regulator who says, well, you're not complying. And so I just wondered about that. And I wondered about the issue that Tom raised as well about partnership with Tammy. And given the current environment that we face, which is, I guess we'll have some protesters outside the building at 5 o'clock on this issue, why have we added 2 Runaka into this consenting debate so early in the piece, 5 years out?
So the first piece that I speak to would just be around that time frame for the consent process. Yep. As I have advised through our long-term planning process around where we have put money into the long-term plan, the expert advice that we've received is that we wouldn't start the detailed design and construction of plant upgrades for Clifton until after we had received the new consent, and that we would expect to work with the regional council around staging of those consent conditions to allow us to design and construct that new plant after 2029 rather than having to do it ahead of time. However, the expectation is still that we would need to start next year to work through that process. The options will be significant around, and to be honest, there will be new technology that we will be unfamiliar with as a council that we are going to have to work through in that process.
So just one other quick question.
If we get there quicker, we can slow it down.
Yeah. You mentioned several times Environment Southland, but it was my understanding that the regulator for Three Waters, which includes the discharge wastewater, is actually the regulator that's been legislated for by the previous government. And I understand the current government's not repealing that.
Te Mata Arawai?
Yeah, they're not repealing the water quality or the regulator. So surely if we're consenting in this area, we're accountable to the regulator, not to Environment Southland.
It's not quite that clear. Okay. The Te Mata Arawai are the direct regulator for water quality. They are not the direct regulator for wastewater. What they're essentially, their role as I understand it, is to make sure that our regional councils who already hold that regulatory role for wastewater and stormwater do the job that they are required to do. So my understanding at this stage, and Te Mata Arawai have been quite clear that they'll form up their wastewater role in the future. At the moment, their first focus is around water supply, but as I understand it, they will be more regulating the regulator than regulating us directly.
And the last part of the second to last question I asked you was why 2 Runaka are invited into the process 5 years out when we already have Tammy there, who are, from what I understand, Tammy, the voices that we should be going to because we pay for that organisation to give us advice.
So where we've talked about inviting in the 2 Runaka, that's on the basis of the bluff consent that we currently have underway. We haven't gotten to a position of forming up the stakeholder group yet for Clifton.
Well,
but still for that one, we're obviously
unhinged me a little bit. Why would Waihopa be invited into a bluff consent?
So we are essentially taking guidance from Tammy, and what they've advised us is that they believe that we should have both Awarua and Waihopa represented.
That's right, we do. Yep, thank you.
Okay, Pania.
Te Rana or Awarua definitely has an interest in both the water supply as well as wastewater. So I noticed here that you're looking at commencing a strategic business case. Do you have a time frame around what that will look like?
It depends on which one you're asking about. Are you asking about the alternative water supply?
Yes.
Alistair, are you happy to talk to the
Yeah,
alternative water supply?
that'll depend on proving the aquifer, so it'll be after July next year.
Okay.
Yep.
And I noticed that the Bluff wastewater consent actually expires in December 2025. But then when I went over, it was like really not considered by the technical team to be a lower type risk consent. So, but then I come down and it talks about issues around high salt concentrated trade waste. Could be sort of one of the main issues. So
that is one of the challenges that we'll have at that site. Yeah.
So literally, it's more than just a low risk. It's actually probably about a medium to a high when you're talking about high salt content trade.
I think when we're comparing it to Clifton, we're talking about it being a lower risk, not a low. It's still, it's still a complicated site, but it doesn't come with the complexities that a site like Clifton does.
Okay, thank you.
Right, look up. Oh, sorry, Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the Bluff issue, I notice on page 90, we're looking at applying for a 35-year consent duration as a stretched target, but with the knowledge that similar ones have been given a 25-year term. So is it just for interest, are we trying to set a precedent here? Is there some particular reason for trying for the 35-year stretch term?
I'm happy if Alistair wants to jump in, but essentially this is something whereby historically we've had longer consents and there's now a preference that is being put forward around shorter consent durations, where essentially our stretch target would be to convince our stakeholders to allow us to have a longer term consent. Every time that we do this, there's a significant investment by the community in redesigning the process and going through the consenting process. So we'd be wanting to give our stakeholders confidence that they can approve a longer term consent for us, thereby pushing out that next investment by the community.
Yeah, that's correct. It's essentially an asset management driven decision and providing security for the community. So the longer we can have a consent for, the more security we can give to that community or Bluff.
So
that's the driver for the 35 years, but precedents have set otherwise.
So it would set a useful new precedent if we were to achieve the 35-year stretch target.
Correct.
Thank you.
Evelyn.
Yes. Kia ora, Mr. Chair, just a clarification. And as members of the table are aware, I am a governor at Te Marama. I will not be on the advisory group, but the difference between our staff and Runaka membership is the question I think that the Koromatawa once clarified, because our staff are our staff. They are not us. Sometimes members of our iwi do work for our organisation. They're not necessarily who are giving advice in this instance. I think you need to be clear of the difference between our kaimahi and the advice and support that they give to councils, and our governors who are actually, or our iwi members who actually might be sitting at this particular invitation group.
To simplify that distinction, and please tell me if I'm overstepping, would that be similar to Tammy would be like inviting Invercargill City Council staff to a meeting versus inviting the elected members to a meeting?
Absolutely apt and appropriate. Thank you, Erin.
Mr. Mayor, third time.
So just in response to Evelyn's clarification, if Tammy staff and their manager can't give us advice on a consent for a water discharge, you'd have to beg the question, what do they give us advice on? I mean, that's not a complex area. Surely you'd expect Tammy to give us advice, to consult with the two Runakas where required, to give us advice. That's what we're paying for through the Tammy process. But then we add another layer in again. And Evelyn says as chair that her staff should not be doing that. Don't quite get there.
Mr. Chair, I don't think that's quite what I said. Our staff are planners and technical support, so it's no different than Ms. Morgan or Mrs. Snow or any staff person going to a meeting, but taking the chair of the committee or another interested councillor with them on a kaupapa. However, if I can assure the table that it will not be me, I also can say that because we have an interest in the alternative water supply as opposed to the Bluff thing, if they're run side by side, we would want to be part of that. But on the Clifton side, that's up to Awaroa whether they still want to be a member, given that they are affected by what goes on in the New River estuary out into the sea. So but I think that's a matter for another day. I just think it's been raised, it's a challenge. I'm happy to clarify with the Koromatu anytime he wants to speak with me separately.
Okay, look, I've got one question and a comment. I'll start with a comment first. The Clifton one, the consent, which is the complex major one, we really do hope for either great technology improvements or something, because in the case of it having to go to land, the worst case scenario, that 89 million would not be enough. That's because obviously we've gone from middle point, haven't we? Somewhere that could cover optional basis. The one with the Ararua water supply, now the Chatham Aquifer, what I've read about that is we're not sure what fills it, whether it's a static body of water and it may not be replenished again if we start drawing it out. So what sort of tests are going to enable us to find out that it's filled by a catchment area somewhere and it's not just a trapped piece of the ice age or something? Yeah.
Firstly, I'm not a hydrologist, so please don't commit me to this. But would they run pumping tests? So this next round, so the original pumping tests that were done on it were to a certain volume, and they took a certain amount out. So this next time we can take more water out faster, and then what they do is they stop pumping and they measure the recharge rate of the area that they're taking water out. And I'm sure there's lots of calculations and algorithms and what have you that go with that, but that's the principle of it. So them actually measuring the recharge capability.
No, excellent. That was the last document I read on this, had that question mark over the recharge.
Yeah, correct.
So we're actually going to find out that. Right, so any further comments, questions? We've got the recommendations. We've got 4 recommendations there. Who would like to move that? Thanks, Leslie. Seconded, Tom. I'm going to put those 4 recommendations. All those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Against? They are carried. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
Right, activities report. Do you want to take that, Erin, or are we going to?
Absolutely, I'm happy to speak to that. There's 3 key pieces that I'd like to draw your attention to with the activity report. The first is that I provided an update on the requirement for us to pull forward the resealing of the surface on Queen's Drive. We went to Wakakatahi with a request to provide additional funding to us for this year's reseal program. By doing that, what we didn't want to have to do was reprioritise other sites that we were planning to reseal this year and divert money to that Queen's Drive site and hold other sites for longer. We've been lucky in that I think we're being at the end of the long-term plan cycle. There must be money that other organisations haven't spent, and Wakakatahi have approved us to have additional funding to allow us to do that Queen's Drive site without having to reprioritise funds from the rest of our reseals program. So that's a good outcome for us for this year. Did you want me to go through all of them or take questions on each one?
I think we'll just take questions and yeah. Mr. Mayor?
So how does this resealing fit with the police inquiry and the coroner's court that looked into the accident, which had a question mark over the ceiling? Now I've heard sort of informally that the police don't believe it was a surface. Are we in a position to determine that so that this is not seen to be sort of a little bit of guilt by stealth, as it were?
So I think I'd advised a previous piece of advice to council, which was that there had been testing of the road surface after the accident happened. That didn't give us any cause for concern at that stage. When, however, that wasn't done with the scrim truck that comes through every couple of years. When the scrim trucks come through now, it's now saying we've now tipped past that point of where we should intervene in a reseal situation.
So, follow-on question for that obviously is that more careful assessment, does that predate back to the time of the accident?
The scrim truck assessment? No, that's only just been done this year.
So it's done this year.
Yeah.
But when was the accident? Previous year?
Last
year. So is it reasonable to assume that somebody might draw the conclusion that the road service contributed?
We didn't have what we had in terms of technology within New Zealand at the time gave us no reason to think that the road surface had contributed. What I can't tell you though is that if we'd have had the international technology, whether that would have given us a different answer.
Sure.
We don't believe so,
Okay.
but we also filter all of our information, provide all of our information back to the police to aid in their investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Rhea.
Thanks, Erin. Just merely asked some of the questions I was interested in, but just with the a couple, when will this resurface take effect? And the product that we've got currently along that stretch of concern, I've noticed in some areas that there's been what I'd call like the product's combusted. It's become loose in areas, so I'm wondering also what product will be put back on that in the resale, and would it be better to last longer than what this recent one has?
Yes. Absolutely, really good question. It was something that the team tussled with because if we just went through and did another chip seal resurface, we were concerned around its ability to bond to the existing surface. That's why it has been the decision to go for an asphalt resurfacing that will eliminate that concern around bonding and also provide a longer term surface.
That's great news.
Anything else on that one before I move on to the other?
We got Grant and then Barry.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether this is a failure of the performance on the contract. Because when that road was laid, it was laid on a really, really hot day, and ever since there's been issues with that road. And so I'm interested in how we'd monitor that contract in terms of should it have failed at this stage, or was it a flaw in the actual when it was actually resealed?
Yeah. So those are discussions that have been had on multiple occasions with the contractor. There's been work done at the contractor's cost to date around trying to improve that surface, and obviously that hasn't held the life of the asset to where it should have. It's still failed a few years early. So those are absolutely the conversations that we are having with the contractor, and something that I would brief council on in public excluded if it wished.
Okay, right, Barry.
Yeah, this is in relation. This isn't it in relation to Queen's Park? I'm thinking more of Clyde Street round to Bluff Road, where all the heavy traffic goes. It seems to be a continuing putting a patch on a patch. Have we never ever thought about concreting that part?
State Highway 1, isn't
it?
Yeah, I was going to say it depends which piece you're speaking to, but if you're actually around on the state highway piece.
Where you go off Bond Street on the heavy traffic bypass and go on to Clyde Street, turn round and then go on to Bluff Road.
Are you talking about before you enter onto Bluff Road?
Yep.
So then if it's sitting within our network, it's something I can raise with the team. One of the things though is that we're funded by Waka Kotahi around essentially a hierarchy of roads, and we are expected that some of our roads should always be deteriorating over time. None of our roads should be in perfect condition. Otherwise, we're over investing in them. What we do is we put forward a bid for budgets to reseal our roads each year, and we're very good at spending that budget each year, but we have to prioritise which roads we are holding and which roads we are actually able to reseal with the budgets that we have available.
Yeah, it's just the amount of tonnage that goes on, like all the logging trucks.
Yeah.
Everything goes on that one stretch of road, and it's continually breaking down all the
Yeah,
time.
and it's one of those pieces that we've constantly got to do that assessment around value for money of repair versus upgrade.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the Gold Coast and that they concrete their roads, and they don't have trouble with them.
At a very high expense.
Yeah, probably. But what about the expense of replacing it all the time and putting a patch on a patch?
Okay, Alan.
This is a wee bit unrelated, Chair, but I just wanted to ask you, with the current government's plan to stop reducing speeds, bear in mind that when we introduced that at the council here a couple of years ago, and it was going to take a couple of years to do it, are we looking at stopping reducing speeds in our area? And you know, in line with what the government now is saying they're going to do. Have we finished the program? We are where we are, and is there any plan to perhaps review some of the changes that have been currently made, like, you know, for instance, Otara Curran's Road sort of thing?
So what I'd say is that we'll obviously continue to monitor what's happening nationally and what the guidance is to us. However, the speed reduction program that council went ahead with, I would suggest, compared to a lot of communities, was quite conservative, what Invercargill City had done in that space. We were then essentially waiting to see what direction central government policy took moving forward. I wouldn't expect at this stage that we would look to revisit any of those unless we were getting community feedback to do so, regardless of what's happening with central government policy. But at this stage, we'll just be being guided by what central government comes out with. We had no plans to be going and doing extreme speed reduction programs across the city at this stage, regardless.
Tom.
Well, it's a different subject, so if Evelyn's want to talk about speed, then take her first.
Well spotted. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Erin or whoever wants to volunteer. Where are we in monitoring the impact, positive or negative, of the speed reductions we've made? Because I think whilst central government may change their position on these things, we're working on behalf of our communities. So if we have statistics to say it's been beneficial or it hasn't been beneficial, isn't that what should form our opinion rather than something else? And so where are we collecting those statistics? When do we start seeing the reports that come from that? And how many years do we have to give it before we actually can see a statistical trend, do you think?
I'd need to check with the team exactly what they've got around the program, but I'd expect that we'd be looking at least 18 months of bedding in, because obviously there's a period of change for people to adapt to and get used to a new normal, and then we would start doing that consultation piece. We also monitor, obviously we get our request for service system where people who aren't happy with various different things would be feeding that back in. There are still a couple of spots that we're hearing a few grumbles about, that we're just continuing to monitor, but in general we haven't had a great deal of negative feedback around the reduction program that we've implemented at this stage.
So if I may do a follow-up, is the feedback that we're getting positive or negative, or both?
Both, so particularly around the, as I understand it, around the lower speeds in the sort of community hub centres, that's been quite positive. I do believe that areas like Curran Road is still getting some grumbles about it.
Thank you.
How many don't come from Allen?
I decline to answer.
Thanks. This is a completely different subject, Chair, and I'll probably be accused of being small-minded by raising this, but if I look at the domestic battery disposal page, and the last page of that, which is page 3 of that report, it says staff have organised a blessing event to mark the launch of the programme. Do we need to organise a blessing event for a battery recycling programme?
Just before we get into those questions, I just wanted the opportunity to talk to those next items because we'd only been taking questions on the Queen's Drive one at the moment. So if I can just give a quick overview of that, and then hopefully that might deal with some of those questions. The first piece has just been around, obviously, drawing your attention to the WasteNet mascot. Piece of work that the team have been doing around trying to engage with the community around that product standardisation. There's been significant push both from this council as well as all of the WasteNet councils around how are we engaging with our community to try to get people thinking about doing the right thing. And Bits McGee, as he's now been dubbed, is part of that program of trying to engage the community around making sure that we are not only doing the right thing from an environmental perspective, but also doing the right thing from a cost perspective, because whenever we get things wrong in our waste journey, that contributes to those higher costs and those higher rates. The better that we can be in that space, the more efficient we can be from a cost perspective.
No birdie budgie.
Now you're dating yourself.
Around the battery disposal system, this is a really interesting one, and I think Councillor Pottinger may have some comments on this. We've been receiving significant push from our contractors around battery disposal for quite some time. It's been contributing to fires both at our recycle processing facility as well as at our landfill. And we've been definitely being read the riot act by our contractors in that respect. Unfortunately, and I think there's a lack of awareness of this, that, I had to change the button remote for my car the other day, and I took the button remote out and I went, gee, what do I do with that now? And I think most people would just put it in the bin and contribute to that problem, not actually aware of the fact that they aren't allowed to put that into their rubbish bin, take it to the transfer station or take it to the landfill. So there's a big education component that we need to do with the community, but we weren't able to do that because we couldn't actually tell the community, gee whiz, where can you take that? So this is actually something that part of the reason for wanting to do the blessing was that media opportunity actually to draw attention to the fact that disposing of your lithium batteries, your batteries out of your mobile phone, etc., is not something that you can just do into your bin, and a lot of people don't actually realise that. So that's part of what we want to draw attention to through this process.
No, that really should be the function of a blessing, though, should it? To draw public attention and some kind of advertising. I mean, I can see the sense, obviously, of a blessing to open a bridge or even a museum or a causeway or something, but a battery recycling project, I mean, to me, that's actually a misuse of the nature of blessing.
I think what I'd say is that there was an intention to do a bit of a media photo opportunity.
Okay.
Both the
That's
team,
not a good idea.
both the team involved on the team side as well as on the contractor side were keen to go ahead and do a blessing. So I don't see a reason, if we have somebody available to do that, why we would stop them from doing that.
Yeah, but it's not a completely free thing, quite apart from any issues around, it's the nature of blessing, but it's not a completely free thing. It involves staff taking time off to go to it. It involves no doubt, councillors will get invited to go to it. Presumably Evelyn or somebody will go and give the blessing. I mean, there is a fairly significant commitment of time involved in it, and I just think the fact that it gets you some free publicity, I don't think is good enough reason for blessing, but personal view.
So I guess what I'd say is I would raise the point that, and I've discussed this with the Chief Executive, we don't have a coordinated process at the moment for events of this type. And I have suggested whether or not there is a standardised approach to this rather than a team-by-team approach at the moment. Maybe something that Council wants to consider. At the moment, it is left as a team-by-team approach.
Grant.
Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed actually. You know, a mascot gets designed, and there's no cheese roll on it.
There's no what?
You don't
Cheese
throw.
roll on it.
You want a recycled cheese roll?
Excuse me, you don't throw cheese
And
rolls.
there's no
However,
motorcycle.
as
I
Councillor
think-
Ludlow's just pointed out, you know, given the quality of cheese rolls that we make down here, I can see why probably they don't end up in the waste. But if there was a
I'll
possibility-
apologise to that as an Australian. I would say perhaps to the WasteNet elected members that you expressed your disappointment that they didn't feed that back to us.
You could do that. I've got Ria.
I wade into this discussion a bit hesitantly, coming from Tom's point of view about blessings for the sake of blessings for media coverage. For me personally, I don't feel comfortable with that. It might be the new modern way that things are done. I don't feel comfortable. I kind of feel that, and I don't mean it to be strong if you take this the wrong way, it's not that I know tikanga to bless batteries or the disposal of batteries. But then I can understand if it's going into the earth, there's something there that can damage her. And I understand that side. But to say that we're just going to do a blessing to get a bit of media coverage on this, I think that's probably just the wrong way to put it.
I'd like to clarify that. I wasn't saying we were doing it for media coverage. What I was saying is we were organising an event to do for media coverage, and then it was decided to also add a blessing onto that as well.
Okay.
So we were already having that staff time there regardless.
Okay.
Barry.
As part of the WasteNet team, I wrote a email this morning, and this is the following. I am struggling to understand why we're having a blessing to bless this site, considering it's a scrap metal yard. It's the old Palmer's scrap. It doesn't make any sense to me. Are we going to be doing this for everything, or?
Peter?
Yes, when I read the agenda last night about having a blessing for a dead battery, what the hell's the bloody world coming to? You know, where's it going to stop? It's unbelievable. You do it for a pet, but not a dead battery.
No, look, I think people, I've been invited to the opening of this facility, which is essential. And thank God for it. It's there now. We can everything from vaping things to computer batteries, which are really dangerous. Now, the fact that there's a blessing there or not, it's the opening of this new facility, which is of high value to the city. So look, I'm open-minded to. It's like someone saying a couple of speeches, and it's all part of what's happening. So, as chair, and both being on WasteNet, look, I'm pleased, and whatever happens there, I think it's going to be great. And I think the media coverage hopefully will get people to think about their batteries.
Can I just say thank you to the chair for saying that, because the staff have worked incredibly hard on this. They were really excited about it. Our contractors are really excited about it, and unfortunately so far the feedback's not been particularly positive to the team in that space.
Sorry, Panya.
Just in response to you, Chair, I totally agree. It's a place, it's a new pathway, it's going to be a new piece of things happening for our batteries, disposal within Bond Street, and it's more than just media coverage. It is the opening and the closing of an event.
Right, Leslie, I'll make you the last one, Leslie. Oh, okay. Sorry, Evelyn. I can't see you down there.
I know I'm very small, Mr. Chair. And I'm right in the corner. As a person whose name was mentioned, I haven't been asked to do the blessing, but I do blessings for lots of things as a deacon. As much as anything, it is about the people who will work in that place. And if it were me, I would be thinking about the people and their safety and their well-being as I perform the blessing. I think that sometimes people go to work at a place and don't know what has happened there before, or they may have a bad feeling about a place. It doesn't matter. But as Panya said, it's a new beginning, and it is one way of celebrating a new beginning and clearing the way for what is to follow. I'd like to applaud the staff who thought about all of this, because this was not imposed upon them. This is a choice that they are making for a place in which they are going to work. And this, to me, is an indicator of how our kaimahi are looking at the world in which they live and how they want it to be. And I want to celebrate and applaud them. It doesn't matter if it's who it is that does the blessing. I think the fact that they feel the need for that is part of perhaps what we might want to look at is their health and safety. Not as, I certainly would not ever participate myself as part of a media event as such, but inevitably such events do attract media. So it's a little bit of the, a two-sided coin. But thank you for all those who made this particular initiative possible, because I'm with Ms. Morgan. What do I do with my batteries? Now I know. Thank you.
Okay, the last is Leslie, and we're going to end this. It's amazing. No one's talked about aged care and...
we haven't got there yet.
Yeah. We're going to go to activities, aren't we?
Yeah, we're still in activities. Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I am prompted to add my voice to the positive congratulations for this event. I actually read the same document that other councillors read last night and thought, great, positive, upmarket way to launch a new program and a new mascot. Good on them for thinking outside the square and using a bit of initiative. I would like to congratulate staff on actually thinking that way, and as Evelyn said, thinking about staff health and safety and the positive use and the difference this is going to make to a lot of people in our community who have for a long time thought about what they do with batteries and what we know about the fires that have been caused at our sites and so forth. I just saw this as a positive initiative. Congratulations to the staff for actually taking the initiative to think about having a positive event that is going to create interest and attention and get the message through on an important part of recycling.
Right. I think that's the last comment. Thank you on the battery saga.
Not on the batteries.
You're not talking about the batteries?
I don't want to talk about the batteries.
Okay, right.
Just a quick question for the two delegates that sit on WasteNet. Some time ago I put 2 reports to the WasteNet chair on the incinerator issue, potential for incinerators as opposed to landfill. Have they been tabled? Are you aware of that?
I wasn't at the last...
no, it would be before the last one.
October 16?
Yeah, prior to that it would be. You recall? Well, I just wanted to reflect, that's really frustrating. I did a lot of work post-PAN and also with the Waipower Council that's now considering a consent from a private sector investor to have a incinerator, and there's also work being done in Denmark. And I would have thought, that when we're trying to think about ways not to contaminate our land, and it doesn't matter where we put stuff at the moment, where the AB line's a great place, and it is, at some later stage we will probably regret putting stuff into land. For that not to be tabled is just...
I think
really frustrating. I mean,
I can either raise it or you can raise it with the chair of WasteNet.
Oh, look, I've written to him twice.
Okay.
We've got a meeting.
I just finished reading that material.
You do the work in the background, and
yep. No, okay. Noted.
Rubbish.
Grant.
Just on 95 ball books, the foul sewer sort of keynotes. Are those errors happening in some of those key infrastructure pieces that were identified in the long-term plan? Or
do you mean blockages and repairs? Etc. I couldn't tell you the detail of those particular ones, but any of those areas where we are having regular blockages or regular breaks is all what informs into that program for renewal.
So it's likely they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then secondly, on page 96, just looking at that, those notes, it'd be good to see that turned into a performance report. So, you know, what does 345 kilometres of sweeping mean? Is that against 1,000 kilometres should have been done, or is it, you know, 29 bus shelters cleaned as opposed to, you know, quarterly we meant to be cleaning 50? So it'd be good to see that information turned into something that we can get some insights into. This is how we're performing, like in our roading network and some of those other pieces against their sort of set objectives.
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress for us in terms of it was information that we weren't necessarily holding and pulling through 12 months ago. The team are now starting to collate that data, but to be honest that we don't have in place yet good systems to make that simple for the teams to be able to give us really good reporting around how our networks are performing. So it is a bit of a journey for us to keep, but I agree we need to keep building on it, but we're probably not going to get to where I'd like to get to, or where I expect a lot of council would like to get to as quickly as we'd like to.
But we would have budgeted, lots of grading will have a budget for grading, budget for sweeping, budget for cleaning. So how are we performing against those things?
So you're just asking for, we can give you against totals, that's fine.
What's the mix of service and cost I'm looking for, probably?
Okay, any further questions on the activity report? Look, I've got a comment to make, but without Mr. Pearson being here, it's about the urban mowing. And earlier this month, I raised an issue about the quality of the centre median strips, and one of them was down by where Mr. Ludlow lives, and the end of Queen's Drive, and the middle of the grass was mowed, and everything near its concrete curbs was this high, and look, it looks terrible. So one of the staff members rang me back and said, no, it's not good enough, and it's being looked into, but I'm not sure where we are. And I think there's been enough emails going around too about people addressing the mowing of lawns and the grass slowing there. So I think, is it possible, Erin, that next infrastructure meeting, it doesn't have to be, you know, that mowing thing may come back, because it shows, we've seen photos of, it looks like hay, you know, on, you know, it's been left.
Sorry, which street was that?
Oh no, this is all the centre plots in town, and Russell assured me that if the mower can't get to it, it needs to be sprayed.
Well, it's the green.
That's right.
Yeah, you know, around there.
So I think I may have spoken at a committee meeting previously. There is a little bit of pieces here that some's done through our maintenance contractor, some's done through our internal team. Definitely we're trying to raise the standard on both, but particularly around our maintenance contract. We're in the initial months of that new contract with Fulton Hogan. One of the areas that we've really asked that team to focus on and to upskill on is around essentially pride in our city, and what our city, particularly in those high-profile areas, looks like, both from a mowing capacity, rubbish in our centre plots, what our gardens look like, our street sweeping, things like that. So it's something that we are aware we're not where we want to be at the moment, and it's an absolute focus for both sides of the team, but it is going to be a little bit of a work in progress, because I think we have gotten a little bit used to what we're used to, and we need to break that cycle moving forward.
I think what makes it worse is that we're in spring and everything is growing. Everyone will know their own lawns. I'm cutting mine twice a week, and it's I mean, but it's that period you've got to watch it.
It's not council staff cutting your lawns.
No, it's not council staff.
To the golf course.
No,
It's absolutely a priority for us as well.
That's called a divot. Right, so Peter, you've got a comment.
Yeah, talking of grass, I've noticed at Thompson's Bush it hasn't been mowed for 2 months. It's very, very long.
I think that's going to come back in Erin's when.
I wouldn't be speaking
It's a
to
disgrace,
that one.
to be
That'll
fair.
be through your.
Been mowed
When? Yesterday or the day before?
last week.
It hadn't been mowed months before that.
So what we have
That'll
is
be a
we have-
reserve issue, so
yeah,
that won't
we
be
got
this committee.
reserves there. We have them as well. I think between now and the next infrastructure, mighty reserves comes under Mr. Capel.
Do you want me to move that report?
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah. Okay, so you've moved and seconded that the report be received. Put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. We might next activities report. We might have a blessing for that to give us help through.
No, that's not funny.
We'll do it in the letter.
Right, okay, we are now going to move into public excluded for the reasons mentioned in the agenda. Can I have someone please move that? Moved Evelyn, seconded Barry. Put that all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, that is carried. Thank you. That's the end of streaming.